By popular demand, Place to Be Nation Wrestling returns to the Dirty South for Talk'n WCW, an episodic wrestler showcase designed to educate, evaluate, and entertain, with matches spanning the intimate stage of Techwood Studios to the heights of Space Mountain. Talk'n WCW presents the best, worst, and most surreal offerings from World Championship Wrestling. So cast your gaze to the Turnertron with hosts Jennifer Smith, Tim Capel, and Greg Phillips.
Hi, welcome to Talk'n WCW. My name is Jennifer Smith. I'm here with my partner, the Jerry Springer to my Ricky Lake, Tim Capel. How are you, Tim?
Oh, that makes my heart and my butt sad.
Yeah, I know.
On this day of days. If you're not aware, folks, on the date of this recording, Jerry Springer has tragically left the world, and we are all blessed for it. Diminished, if you will. But
Sad
we
day.
shall soldier. We shall soldier on, and we shall bring in the Maury Povich, perhaps,
Yeah.
to our circus of
Montel
insanity.
Williams?
Montel Williams, I like it. Our Montel Williams to our Jerry Springer and Ricky Lake, and that is the immortal Greg Phillips. Greg, how you feeling this evening? This fine, crisp evening.
When it comes to the case of Talk'n WCW, we are all the father/mother.
Yes. And that is apropos because the wrestler we're talking about, similar to Jerry Springer, was quite a rebel in his day, is tragically no longer with us, and was a father as well. Father, of course, to the great Ronda Rousey.
What a great transition.
Oh, honey bun.
Carrying
That was
on
good.
his tradition today. Right?
How it works.
Well, you ruined me already in the show, so good luck with that.
All right. Thanks very much, folks. We'll talk to you next time.
Yes. Well, it's always great when you can start a show off with, yes, our subject today has many things in common with Jerry Springer. First of all, they're both dead.
They're both dead.
They both hosted shows, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And they were fathers, question mark?
Piper had like 6 kids, didn't
Yeah,
he?
we know.
Yes.
He
We
was
know
the
that
father.
he legitimately had, well, we don't know they're all legitimate, but we know that he was a father, truly, factually. But the Ronda Rousey part is perhaps somewhat in question.
Yeah, let's hope so.
I didn't check Wikipedia before getting on
Okay,
this
good.
call.
It's not
Who
impossible.
wears the jacket better, Ronda or Roddy?
Everything. Roddy does everything better.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, Roddy's the originator. Roddy's he's the rebel without a cause. He's Roddy Piper.
Well,
He's
and
insane.
he's the rowdy Scotsman by way of Saskatchewan, Canada, I believe.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Now
he
residing
knew,
in the great northwestern city of Portland, Oregon.
that's right. Got his start in wrestling in the various California territories, and settled into Portland for a spell before making his way to Crockett Country. Right.
Yeah.
This is all, by the way, after he became affiliated with the famous Hart family, right? And
Yes.
in fact, How and when did he know Bret Hart, Greg? Do you remember the circumstances there?
As I understand it, and this is I apologize if the details are a little off, but my understanding is that he was hanging around the Hart family when Bret was knee high to a grasshopper. And his mama used to come in there and make him a sandwich. Only one piece of bologna for him, of course. But he'd make him a sandwich nonetheless, and he'd just slap you around, and there you'd be. Of course, she always liked me better, but that's and basically that's my understanding of how he came to know the Hart family.
Sounds like
Did
the
Bret
Joker a little bit.
A little bit.
Well, could be. I mean, they're cackling madmen in their own ways. So
I can see that.
Now, Roddy,
kayfabe cousin of the Hart clan.
Kayfabe cousin, yes. So I feel like he would know. Did Bret take his sandwiches with the crust on or off?
My understanding, per Roddy, is that Bret requested the crust to be taken off of the bread.
His bologna sandwiches.
Yeah, which of course meant that he wasn't as tough as Roddy. Roddy was a little older, a little wiser, a little tougher.
Mm-hmm.
Always just a little bit
willing to, take in that fiber.
Very important to have a high fiber diet, especially when you're in the Canadian wilderness and your father is, doing borderline sexual activities to you in the basement.
Borderline. My dad never did anything borderline in his life. He stretched young boys. There was nothing sexual about it.
And yeah, I can't help but notice you got some big arms there. What if I stretched them? I bet Stu would have loved to run a rubber band factory. Think about it.
So much stretching.
God, he could as long as he wanted to and never get tired.
Stretch all day. Yeah. Oh,
just
man.
breaking rubber bands left and right.
Absolutely.
Now the driveway, the road to the Hart house, was it crooked or was it straight? To the dungeon.
I think that it was. I think that's actually something that you'd have to be there to know. I mean, I don't want you to expose me as an Eric Bischoff like maker up of facts here.
Telltale.
Yeah.
All right.
We would never do that.
No, never. No. I have never once made an exaggerated story.
Not on this podcast.
No. That's not what we're about, quite frankly. Never.
It's not what we do here. We're here for the facts and the cold hard wrestling analysis.
Right, the facts only. This is a no nonsense
podcast. If you're not interested in detailed star ratings, breakdowns of every move and hold, and timed breakdowns even of the intricate high spots, then this is not the show for you, quite frankly. We're here to talk about wrestling as an exact science. That's what we're about, quite frankly.
That's what Piper's known for, surely.
Yes.
Technical prowess.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And his very clinical offense as well.
Right. Clinical for sure.
No man has been able to combine the grappling skills of a young Ed Strangler Lewis with the offensive prowess of Curly of the Three Stooges. That's right. Roddy Piper, in my opinion.
I'm pretty sure that is why he has a black belt in judo.
There you go. Trained by the great judo Gene LaBelle.
Yes, was given to him by Gene LaBelle. Yes. Okay. So we've caught you up on
something.
Roddy Piper, where he come from, where he is now, and where we are is in 1982. As I said, in Crockett Country, we're in Mid-Atlantic. It's my neck of the woods, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Because under this definition of the Mid-Atlantic states, that's the Carolinas. That's the Carolinas and Virginias, you guys. And Maryland, I suppose. So this is actually, you're probably going, why the hell would Tim pick this old-ass fucking wrestling match?
I did wonder.
Because, and I'll tell you, this is, I don't know how to describe it other than my oldest favorite wrestling match. Like, as far as you can go back and watch wrestling and find things to enjoy,
this is your break.
I'm not saying like there isn't stuff from 1981, 1980 that isn't good, but in terms of like what kind of really speaks to me, and that I think is the best, oldest match, and I think it's this one. Granted, I'm not saying I've seen a ton of like pre-1985 wrestling, not exactly my bag. We're talking stuff that is upwards of 40 years ago
Mm-hmm.
now. But I got to tell you, the first time I watched this, which was for right here on Place V Nation, the greatest WCW match of all time project, I was like, what could this really be? And I was very, very pleasantly surprised watching this match from 1982 in the Mid Atlantic Studios. Um, it's one of those things where again I also haven't been exposed to a lot of the work of the Briscoes individually or as a
Mm.
tag team. We're talking Jack and Jerry, right? Not
Yes, not Jim Mark. Yep.
yeah. So I should probably tell you what the match is for starters, not leave you in suspense. It is Roddy Piper versus Jack Briscoe, and it is for the Mid Atlantic Heavyweight Championship and a $10,000 purse just to sweeten the pot, I suppose. So the way this comes about is
$7,000 of which comes from Mid Atlantic Wrestling, and $3,000 of which
yes.
Steamboat Wahoo McDaniel, presumably because the Crockett's were too cheap to come up with.
This is amazing. Yes, this is an
Yes.
amazing detail that, and it's like such a self burial that I can't believe they even did it. Because so what happens is Roddy Piper has taken possession of the Mid Atlantic Championship belt that is held by Jack Briscoe. He is refusing to relinquish it unless the promotion actually signs the two of them to a match for the title, and for good measure, they need to put up $10,000 for him to go through with this. Only then will he relinquish control of the belt and face Briscoe in a one-on-one match. So at the signing, I guess so to speak, here again in Mid Atlantic, it's cash only, right? We're not going to be working with a check. We're not going to be using negotiable bearer bonds.
No checks.
Checks
No
only.
checks in
Cash
Scotland.
only. Excuse me.
Yep.
Yeah. No checks in Scotland, baby. So big wad of cash comes out, and Roddy's counting it very very diligently, counting the cash
Mm-hmm.
in this pre-match promo, and he says, "You're scum, Crockett, you're scum," because they shorted him. They have shorted him the cash,
Which I
and
thought
then
he was lying.
immediately, yeah,
I thought he was lying about it.
I did
you would
too.
think he's the heel. He's the heel, right? So he would be just making up a story, trying to extort them for still more money. That's the move, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But immediately they launch into some story about how, oh, so close to the holidays, we had a hard time fronting the money. Like, what holiday? This is the 10th of July. We're some ways removed from Independence. I guess this could have been recorded a week or but pretty weak. You guys can't come up with $10,000 in your coffers, really, cash. So Roddy's like, "Fuck you, buddy," but he's ready to walk away. And I don't blame him.
Oh,
Yeah, quite frankly, I don't blame him. But
Quite
out
frankly,
comes
I'm shocked that they are negotiating with kidnappers, first of all. And
ma'am.
for that title, that belt is ugly as sin. I'd be like, take it off
Well,
my hands.
here's a little secret. Almost all the wrestling belts were ugly as sin back then.
I believe it, but that one especially was
I guess that's
trash.
I guess that's why they ran all the angles where they would do something to like physically destroy the belt and have to have a new one commissioned.
I would like to destroy this belt.
Yeah, well, it's one of those deals where like you would see this I don't know that this is the first time it's ever been done. I highly doubt it, but this is one of those angles where the heel walks around, basically gets to pretend and tell the whole world that they're the champion because, hey, possession is 9/10 of the law, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've got the belt. The champion is now in the position of like chasing them for the prize that they already have. And you can get some good storytelling
Out of
out of that, I
curiosity,
feel like.
Tim, when was the first time that you encountered that angle in wrestling?
Well, mark that I am probably when Raven did it to DDP.
Yeah, Raven did it to DDP.
And
Yeah,
WCW. Yeah.
that's when, and Raven ended up winning, right? Winning the championship from him.
Yes. Yeah, because they were doing some angle. It was an MTV backstage thing that DDP was like a special guest promoting something. Was it the music video? Was it the
Yes.
Stuck Mojo
I
music
think it was
video?
the Stuck Mojo video.
Yes. So he's
The
like
what?
promoting that. It was so Chris Jericho's band Fozzy before they were Fozzy and before Chris Jericho was a quote unquote musician. These were the guys, and that was their band mainly. And then
Okay.
he came along, and then it became Fozzy. I think that's how it went.
Yeah, that's basically, they were Stuck Mojo, and then they formed like a little side project with Jericho called Fozzy Osbourne.
Fozzy Osbourne.
Uh,
Yes.
and then eventually they just became an act, their own little deal, and Stuck Mojo,
Mhm.
I guess, is no longer a thing. But
It's sort of like if the expression a snake eating its own tail, but if that snake was represented in serpentine form by butt rock, it's sort of like
Okay.
butt rock going in on itself kind
I
of
hate
thing.
itself.
Yeah, and something else
Wonderful.
coming out the
Love
other
that
end.
description.
Yeah.
Well,
So out comes Raven, DDT's DDP through like a glass table, and
I remember it now. I can visualize it. I
yeah,
watching it that afternoon.
yeah.
The first time I remember it happening was a little bit different than how they did it here, but it was the Mr. Perfect Hulk Hogan angle from 1989, where I think the Genius beat Hogan by countout, and so Perfect and stole the WWF Championship, and then they did the whole possession as 9/10 of the law thing, and then Mr. Perfect said that he was going to destroy the championship with a hammer and to send a message to Hulk, and he did. He broke it up with a hammer, and
There you go. Like I said, you got to
yeah.
destroy these ugly ass titles.
Yeah. So anyway, so here's Piper with the Mid Atlantic belt, and of course, because they don't have the full $10,000, he has to get 3,000 thrown in at the last second by the babyfaces Ricky Steamboat and a very dapperly dressed Wahoo McDaniel.
Right.
I did not
Yeah. So out
recognize
comes.
Wahoo.
I know. Well, it took me a second. I was like, "Who's this?" I was like, "Oh,
I
okay,
sure
that's
did.
Wahoo."
I recognize both of them. My greatest my greatest teacher was Wahoo.
I think this was after the time period where Wahoo had stopped exercising.
Oh, okay. Great.
The reason he gave Rick was, "Are you kidding me? At my age, I don't exercise anymore." So,
Why would you?
which he kind of has a point, I guess.
What's it all matter, Rick? We're gonna die anyway.
Yeah. Hey, Wahoo, you want to go to the gym with us? We're gonna work out. I don't work out anymore.
We're gonna go to the gym and work out, and then we're gonna drink for 24 straight hours. I'll do that part.
Wahoo
I can't
was
wait
smart.
to hear you describe this match too.
He just skipped all that. Well, I know I'm beating around the bush here. So yeah, Wahoo and Steamboat, yeah, front the rest of the money here, I guess, because they hate Roddy Piper so much that even though they're criminally negligent organization that is bilking this man out of what they agreed to, the $10,000, they just want to see him get his ass whipped. So even though their employers are a bunch of crooks, they don't care. They'll put up the money themselves, and we're off and running. So, and I love how skittish like Piper is throughout this whole segment. You can tell this is like just a world of grifters and con artists. It's just you're one or the other, and it's all the same, right? It's one person trying to out con the other, and if it's not the wrestler, it's the promoter, and it's just this is like the world that we live in. That's the picture that's been painted by this this quick little 3-minute promo where Roddy is demanding the cash, and they've shorted him the cash, and now we're finding some other way to come up with it. It's just, God, what a world, right? Just
Yeah.
it sounds exhausting, but it explains a lot about why Roddy Piper is the way that he is, I feel.
I feel like it would breed
Uh,
paranoia.
yeah, breathing very, yeah, exactly. So anyway, all right, off to the match. It's against Jack Briscoe. How to describe Jack Briscoe? Jack Briscoe looks like maybe he stepped off the set of Dallas,
Mm.
the TV show, mind you, not the city. Probably contemporaneous to this same match here in 1982.
Yeah.
He could be like a lost Jock Ewing brother, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
I can picture him with
I like it.
a white button up,
uh-huh.
shirt, denim, jeans with a big belt buckle and a cowboy hat and running a ranch. Like he doesn't
Right.
ride the horses. He just runs the ranch because he's got wrestling to do on the side, but he comes back
Yeah.
and everything's in order,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, after they fire the guy who stooping the
Yeah.
niece,
Yeah,
who I
and
think they later retconned into his daughter or something. Anyway,
then Bobby Ewing off because he's being a little shit as usual. So, they
right.
send him and they'll tell him he has to deal with Briscoe if he screws up again.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, that's Jack Briscoe. He's very stoic, right? He's all business
Mm.
here, and that's what we get. Bell rings, and we're off. It's Briscoe just advancing on Piper, leads to a series of really rough, like collar and elbow tie-ups. You wouldn't think that that's like a stiff move and it's such an elementary, fundamental move of wrestling, but they make it look really kind of
Yep.
gnarly the way
Yeah.
they hook up.
They make it look like they're like legitimately locking up with each other and trying to gain an advantage. It's
Yeah, it looks quite legit. Piper goes for a body slam, trying to transition out of this. But then a hip toss. Briscoe just has him telegraphed, has an answer for all of it. Just kind of demonstrating from the jump here that he is the more well-rounded, the more technically proficient wrestler here to Roddy's brawler, if you will. And Briscoe then fires off an arm drag, sends Piper rolling out of the ring. He's kind of rattled already in the early going of this match. So back in the ring, Piper does score a takedown, so we get a mat wrestling sequence out of this.
Mm.
I mean, straight out of like Kurt Angle's playbook that you would see when they would do these little segments,
Yep.
in the early 2000s. Briscoe really just gets the better of all of that. But Piper does get to his feet, manages to gain an advantage only by pulling the hair. So now he's immediately resorting to his cheating tactics. Briscoe is having none of that and just sends Piper out to the outside again. Takes a really just rough tumble. Just they're milking these bumps, such as they are, for all they're worth, I feel like.
Mm.
And what is kind of a minimalist sort of style here that they're working. They're making the most of what little they are doing, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of nuance here in this match. So Piper is even more hesitant now upon re-entry in the ring. Briscoe now catches him in a side headlock. Side headlock, takedown, and here we're going to work, right? Piper tries to counter out of that by sending Briscoe into the ropes to escape. Leapfrogs that rebound, but gets clobbered by big lariat. That really pops the crowd because now we be throwing bombs. And they're game for some of that because they want to see Piper get his ass whipped. More work with the headlock now. Headlock takeover on Piper by Briscoe. Piper does manage to regain his footing, but Briscoe's just hanging in there, continues wrenching the move, just working it nonstop. Piper runs up the turnbuckles in a pretty cool escape attempt, but Briscoe managed to hang on even through that. They're like rolling around now, somersaulting on the ring, and he's holding on to this move through all of it. Piper reverses into a pin attempt thinking, okay, Briscoe's got to break the move now, otherwise he's going to get pinned. But nope, crafty veteran Jack Briscoe here manages to escape the pin and even maintains the headlock out of this.
Yeah.
And Piper's just flopping around like a fish now. You can tell like he's getting desperate. He's got to find a way to break. Finally does so by sending Briscoe up the top rope and then bringing him down in a belly to back suplex, which looks really, really cool. This is that whole sequence, which lasts, I don't know, it feels like about 5 minutes. I didn't actually time it. That's the most mileage I've ever seen out of somebody just working a side headlock, right? And it just kind of kept me enthralled through all of it. At no point did I get bored and think we need to move on to something else, because Briscoe is working the whole time.
Right.
Piper's trying to escape, trying to get creative, and it works really beautifully for this match. So now Piper, with the slight advantage here, laying in a kick and then massive overhead chops. That staggers Briscoe. Front face lock by Piper, and he transitions that into a pin of his own. Briscoe kicks out. And then Piper slams Briscoe's head into the turnbuckle, tosses him outside the ring, and that leads to an exchange of chops. Again, the fans are game for this. I am too. Back on the inside, Jack attempts a body slam, but Piper floats over, locks in the sleeper, what will be his future signature move, right? They're not putting it over like they would in later years where, this is it, right? This is,
Right.
His finish. But we're just about under 12 minutes into the match. Both guys are pouring sweat. Piper is bleeding, presumably, I'm guessing, hard way at some point. I don't think he bladed. It's been a rough enough match that I could see it happening off of just anything, really. But he's working that sleeper. The champion hanging in there, fighting valiantly. Piper, bringing Briscoe into a seated position, continuing to work that sleeper hold. Briscoe nearly goes out, but he has the sudden burst of energy at the last moment and makes the escape with a side suplex. Briscoe then hops on Piper's shoulders, applies a sleeper of his own. Piper now starting to fade, breaks the hold with some signature Three Stooges offense, an eye poke, Greg.
Yeah.
Leads to an exchange of fisticuffs now. Really cool stuff. Chops and overhand backhands, punches. Piper then, in the confusion, is seen pulling a gimmick from his tights. We're not quite sure what it is. He's taking a powder on the outside, but then hops back on the ring apron, blasts Briscoe with what turns out to be a roll of coins. Jack Briscoe is out cold, and it allows Piper to easily pick up the win and the championship. So
And
now he is
the $10,000.
Yeah, he's won it all. Won it all here. Legitimately now the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Champion and $10,000 richer. He got his way. His scheme succeeded. Don't you love to see it? Jenny, did you love to see it?
So I loved to see the end where he got hit with the roll of quarters. I'm gonna call them quarters because I don't know why you would use pennies in the situation or any other coin.
Right.
But like I
Kayfabe
get
quarters,
like the
if you will.
right, yes. It's hard for me to get on board with like coming into it with the scene that we had. I thought it would be a little bit more heated. I thought Briscoe was more of a brawling type wrestler, and then he wants to put like endless holds on Piper. So I felt disappointed largely through the match. I just thought it was going to be different. Like I was like, I like the side headlock work and stuff like that, but I don't know.
I thought it was that they did not have Briscoe involved in the segment before the match.
That was weird.
Yeah, like where he was clearly in the building, but he was not, taking umbrage with Piper being out there, threatening not to defend the belt if he didn't get his his 10 grand. But maybe there was a storyline reason for that. I'm not sure, but I did think
don't know.
unusual.
He just, yeah, like if somebody stole my title, I think I'd be real, hot about it, and it would kind of show in the ring. But he was just totally methodical about it on Piper. And then Piper has such this chaotic energy. He brought the chaotic energy, and then once he got in the ring, it was like we're just trying to chop and escape from sleepers. Um, so anyway, but I really like the studio setting. Like that's a treat for me.
Yeah.
I don't watch a lot of these studio type shows, except for NXT, I guess. But uh, the crowd was like really into it. They were like you said, really hoping to see Piper get
David
his ass beat.
are into it.
That's true, yes. But I did like the end. So the end was the fuckery that I was sort of expecting and wanting to see, and then his whole performance after he stumbles over, screaming about I hit him with nothing but power, and
Yeah.
how he's the champion, puts the money in his mouth at one point, just really unhinged, which was just totally opposite from the energy that he brought to the ring. So,
and he explains that the fans were the ones that threw the coins into the ring. It wasn't him.
yeah, he
Right,
tries to
yes,
blame
yes.
the fans. I don't know what that is. But yeah, it was just missing a lot of that kind of off off the I don't know off the cliff type energy that Piper usually brings until the end.
So I get where you're coming from, because I have that complaint a lot of times in wrestling. That one WrestleMania, whichever one it was that had Triple H and Randy Orton in it, where they, grappled for like 30 minutes or whatever after the dude broke into his house. But I disagree on this match, just because I felt that the method of Jack Briscoe's sort of history. He was an NCAA wrestling champion. Like he really was the Kurt Angle of his day in wrestling. Like he was a prodigy.
Well, that makes more sense then.
Yeah, he was a prodigy amateur wrestler that was like, world class and considered at the time like one of the most legitimately tough guys in the wrestling business. But in the wrestling context, he wasn't necessarily a fighter per se. But like so I thought that it, for me, it worked because Jack Briscoe would go for double legs and he would go for lockups and use his wrestling superiority to try to not just beat and humiliate Roddy Piper, but to hurt him. And I think that's kind of what I loved about this match, was that it felt like everything was sometimes you hear wrestlers talk in like shoot interviews or whatever, or when they're explaining the craft of wrestling, they'll talk about wrestling with intent and no wasted motion, things like that. And for a long time, I didn't really fully understand what that meant. And I think over the time, I've at least in my definition in my head of what it means, is kind of what these guys were doing a little bit. And then everything that they did in the match had a purpose behind it. It wasn't like, okay, this is the part of the match where we go into this sequence. This is the part of the match where one of us has to go up and hit a signature move. It was like everything is within the context of what just happened before and what they want to do to win the match. So like Piper fighting out of that headlock for so long, he knew he was fading and getting more desperate to get out of it, and he just can't escape from it. And the longer he's in it, the more that Jack Briscoe is wrenching on it and hurting him and squeezing him and putting him in pain.
And the more he looks like a fool for not being able to escape what is essentially a basic hold, right?
And just little nuances in this match, like Piper. I love the drop down where Piper's actually trying to trip him with the drop down, and Briscoe gets over him and they do the leapfrog.
Yeah,
deal.
he's like, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah.
Yeah, they're having these little struggles in the various holds, the headlocks, the takeovers, the arm drags, all of that stuff. Briscoe has the advantage, but when it comes to the little tricks, the getting dirty, Piper has the advantage, and Piper also, he wants to beat Briscoe in these areas, but he just can't. Everything is with the intent of escaping a hold, applying a hold, getting the victory through any means necessary in Piper's manner. And I think in Briscoe's, the way I looked at it is Briscoe had chances at times to beat Piper, but he wanted to embarrass him. He wanted to hurt him. He wanted to make him suffer a little bit because Briscoe's the former world heavyweight champion and the more respected name at this point. And another little nuance to the finish that I loved was, so Piper grabs the gimmick, the roll of quarters, and here comes Briscoe to attack him, and he punches Piper, and Piper falls down. He's still holding it. And then Briscoe himself, he's so upset and he's so angry with Piper, he shoves the referee out of the way, and that's what gives Piper his moment to then hit with the roll of quarters and do it in a way that the referee can't see it and disqualify him. So he uses Briscoe's moment. Briscoe has wrestled the whole match for the most part under control. He loses his cool in that one moment, and Piper takes advantage to let his plan that he clearly had play to fruition. So I really liked it, and I've become more and more of a sucker for that style of wrestling, the working headlocks and stuff like that, because it's so rare to see in modern. There's a lot of things in modern wrestling that are incredible to watch that they didn't do back then, but like it's very rare to see guys come out and do things with such intent and such wrestling, trying to struggle within the wrestling element. And it really did feel like a struggle. And I think at times I can understand also watching it. For some people, it might be, it's not going to be the smoothest thing in the world, and they're not necessarily going to go into the wild, crazy brawl that we'll see in our next match, which is, obviously filled with violence. But I thought that it was a violent style of wrestling, if that makes sense, mat wrestling to me. So I think that's why it didn't bother me as much as it does with some matches. And I thought I loved it. I was enthralled because I've never seen it before. I haven't watched a lot of Jack Briscoe matches, single matches. What I have seen, I've loved, because he's kind of that, style of wrestler that I've always been a sucker for, the Bret Hart, Kurt Angle style of wrestler. So I've always been a fan of his when I've watched him, and I think that this was also a little bit of a different side of Piper, but a sign of things to come with regards to his promo ability. Like I really want to delve more into Mid-Atlantic Piper in my free time, because I've not seen a ton of his work in Mid-Atlantic, and he looks like you can definitely see how Vince McMahon would have looked at him and said, "My God, I got to get a hold of this guy."
Yeah. And I think had this gone longer like this, that there are some versions of this match that are like twice as long, right? It's like upwards of 30 minutes. I think that could have gotten a bit tiresome, but it's just the right amount of time. It's about a 15-minute match, right? And I just found it well paced. But mainly what spoke to me are just the characters, the contrast between the characters primarily, and the story that they tell here through what is ostensibly just a very, again, kind of meat and potatoes wrestling match. But it's Roddy Piper, who has done so much outside the ring to stack the deck as much as possible against his opponent. He's making all these demands. He's going in with, all these conditions. And you've got Briscoe, who's this sort of world-weary, consummate professional, very steadfast in his approach, and he sees exactly what Piper is doing, and instead of kind of succumbing to his emotions and letting this get personal, he's not really taking this thing personal. He's going to go out there and handle it as a professional, and he's going to actually force Piper to wrestle his kind of match instead. And so that's the advantage that he has. That's how he's leveling the playing field, so to speak, against this trickster really in Roddy Piper. But to Greg's point, all it took was just that one moment of just unbridled chaos at the end, just that one brief instant where Briscoe does lose his composure and he loses the whole match. He loses the championship, loses the money. He's lost it all here. And, to the victor go the spoils here, Roddy Piper, like, you can tell it didn't take much. He just had to survive long enough to make Briscoe slip on that banana peel.
Yeah. What the cameras didn't pick up on at that time because of the technology is Piper actually whispered to him that his mother made bad bologna sandwiches, which is
that's what it was. That's what did it. That's where I got personal. Yeah. And Briscoe just couldn't handle it. But yeah, I just love the story that it told. I thought it was an engaging match. It's I think wrestling with purpose is a good way to describe it, and it's the exact opposite of where you see a match of this vintage where there's a lot of holds and they're all just what we would call rest holds, right? And it's literally just, okay, a guy needs to take a break here. And that is the complete opposite of wrestling with purpose, right? I think that's the type of thing you see in a lot of, I hate to say it, but like Rick Rude matches where it's like, oh God, here we go with the chin lock. Here we go with, the headlock that goes on for too long. Here we get a headlock that lasts for 5 minutes, but it's part of that story that's being told, and there's little intricacies, on either side of that. And I just found it really remarkable in its ability to hold my interest and hold my attention, because I don't think of a match like this as really being capable of doing that. So I'm probably overrating it, but I just think because of sort of the inherent difficulty going in, given my own taste in professional wrestling, for this to impress me as much as it did, I'm kind of like very high on it. And I know we're pushing the threshold here, 1982, of what is truly WCW, but in my mind, anything Crockett from 1980 on, I'm just counting as WCW. I'm just sort of retroactively putting it into the WCW bucket, even though, yes, we're truly in the territory days here, the dying territory days, but such look, as it is.
We got into like late 80s Crockett stuff. There's no reason not to include this, right?
No reason not to. Yeah, where it's got that same lineage. Yeah, it's the exact same Crockett company.
It's still, it's the same. It's the same territory, same
yes,
lineage, as you put it.
And that's going to continue that continuity into our next pick, right?
It will. This is pretty much the match that I think of when I think of Piper. And so it is from Starrcade 83. It is the dog collar match with Greg Valentine. A little bit infamous. I feel like a lot of people have probably seen this at some point. Like, it's not a
This is probably a lot of people's oldest favorite match.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
In terms of
1983 is pretty old.
Yeah. 1983 is pretty old. Old as I am.
I've seen this show a couple of 7 times because I would fall asleep after I would put it on,
Yeah.
Especially ringing endorsement, yes.
Especially during the overrated main event, but that's neither here nor there.
I don't know. I
have a soft spot for this show. I like this show. I even like the overrated main event. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's a comfort food kind of thing.
Gene Kaniski, you can go to hell.
Yes.
He does suck. Yes, he does suck. But Tony is so young in this. When he's in the backstage with Harlan and Flair, and it's Flair for the gold, and everybody is just all horned up for Ric Flair. But then out come these motherfuckers, and Greg Valentine, always fun to watch for me. And
don't forget about the announcing crew here before we get to the wrestlers. I mean, my goodness.
Oh, of course. Who we got for announcers?
We've got Gordon Soley with talking about the prefrontal cortex that everybody was hitting throughout the match, and you've got the dulcet tones of Bob Caudle. Gentle Southern man that could be your father, your uncle, or your grandfather. You're not sure how old he is.
I
Or how
think
drunk
he's
he is.
more he's my father, and Gordon Soley is my grandfather,
I like
who,
that.
bless his heart, I mean, we're about an hour 15 into the show. Gordon Soley's probably about 4 vodka sodas into the show. But we love him for it.
Eyes
We
going
do.
back to the ear, and Piper holding that prefrontal cortex again.
He can still say prefrontal cortex, which is
Which
pretty
is good.
impressive for an
Is
inebriated
there
broadcaster.
is there like a medical word for ear that he could have pulled out ear instead of just saying ear the whole
I don't
time?
know.
Right.
I don't
It's
know.
cartilage.
What is it?
External.
What is it that Gorilla Monsoon used to call the external occipital protuberance?
Protuberance. Yeah.
So we get those guys, and they are, first of all, they're putting over the chain, how deadly the chain can be,
We
how heavy it is.
chain. That's what he said. I heard that.
Oh my God. And Piper has a pre-existing ear injury from, I think, a ring bell shot from Mr. Valentine previously.
Well, that's why it was
On
the year of the year. The year of
yes,
the ear is easy for me to say,
the ear of the
which is
year.
going to continue. Yeah, the ear damage is it's going to be kind of a theme of this match, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much tension in the beginning because it looks scary. Like it looks freaky.
Yeah.
I think this was the first dog collar match. I think I read that somewhere. But at least probably the first one that a lot of people had seen.
Yeah,
but before
sure.
that, they while they're setting up, they do these sitcom style break-ins with just like a photo of them looking so vanilla and smiling. And they flash these cards up as they're in the ring getting freaking collared up. It is so awkward and hilarious.
I was gonna ask y'all what was up with that. Who was that blonde guy that was like standing next to Valentine? I want to know his story.
I don't.
And then all of a sudden they throw up some spinning card with Greg Valentine's stern face on it.
He was just deadpan, just like, I mean,
Yeah.
Piper was smiling, and then and Valentine just stony faced. So they make the big production out of getting them all collared up and tied up, and then they start just basically with tug of war with their necks, which looks horrific to me. Like,
It really does.
Mhm.
Yeah.
out of all the crazy, insane, brutal shit they do in this match, that initial tug of war is just like a real tension builder. I thought they were wonderful and building that first shot up with the chain, and Piper gets that first strike to a big pop. And then they kind of feel each other out a little bit. I think they're getting used to, the chain and how it feels around their neck. And
Right.
but once they start gathering up that chain and start taking shots at each other, they warm up fairly quickly. Greg doesn't have much luck getting Piper in the beginning, but finally he gets some elbow shots in there, and then he uses the chain to go right at that ear. First chance he gets, he goes right at that ear. He wraps the chain around Piper's eyes and his throat in the middle of the ring, just pulling it tight. Great visual on that. And then Piper turns it around on him and gets the chain around his face, in his mouth, in Valentine's mouth. Sick looking spot. And this stuff just looks so real.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there's
real,
no other
real.
way to put it. Yeah.
It really does.
Yep.
Piper eventually wraps the chain up around the turnbuckle and uses his leverage to pull on it, and basically like choking Greg out that way in the corner. Chokes him hard. So much choking based offense as you would imagine in a dog collar match. Greg escapes to get Piper by the throat under the rope. He's just vicious. And they slip under the rope to the outside, where Piper just kind of blindly grabs a chair and kind of tries to chuck it at him, and Greg starts to bleed really well. I'm not sure at what point he I don't know if it was the chair, but it was when they were on the outside when you started seeing his blonde hair turning red.
Yep.
And get used to it because there's a lot of blood in this match. Greg, again, attacking the ear, punching it, a lot of punching, shoves it against the post really hard on the outside, and then pulls them back into the ring by the chain, which was really cool. Gordon starts talking about Piper's equilibrium, how the ear is starting to affect him in the match. His balance is getting off, and Piper is kind of stooging around, acting off balance. A great attention to detail, and great for Gordon to try to, play up
Mm-hmm.
this feature of the ear injury. Piper flailing around all over while Greg finally covers for 2 after some elbow drops as Piper's laying on the mat. Valentine tries to bounce off the rope, but Piper, you thought he was resting. No. Greg jerked off of his feet by Piper after
Jerked
he tried.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, jerked off his feet
Lita
by.
jerking Edge off the ladder.
And then he just starts attacking him with more punches and kicks and goes nuts on him. Pummels him with the chain, hard strike, right on the top of the head, too. Gordon starts worrying about a concussion on Valentine now. Then we get more punches, back and forth. Greg takes a wallop to the jaw, just a huge hand by Piper, right in the middle of the ring. And Greg keeps trying to pin him, but Piper keeps kicking out. Piper not covering much at all. I think he's enjoying the rope or the chain part of it. They start fighting for a suplex finally. Because, we're just doing chain work,
Great.
kicks,
An actual
punches.
wrestling move, yeah.
Yes, basic stuff, but brutally. And then they're fighting over the suplex. By this time, the blood is absolutely poured to Greg's torso, his ribs covered in blood. Like he is all about covered in blood. Piper gets the suplex and they lay for a minute while the ref counts. I don't know why. We're no DQs here, ref. I'm not sure why you're counting, but Greg finally grabs the sleeper and he's working it, and slowly Piper's gathering the chain in his hand. I guess he's trying to hide it from Greg. I'm like, pretty sure he can see you, but it worked as far as what he does next, which is just reach back and strikes him as they fall back and hits Greg right in the head as they fall. And then he basically gets Greg over to the corner, jerks him again violently to the ground, just starts hammering with the chain and wraps the chain around Greg's knees to kind of pull up during the cover and finally gets the win. I love the finish. The way he just starts wailing on him as Greg just lays there defenseless was amazing. Piper almost gets carried out of the ring with 2 random guys. I'm not sure who the guys are with him.
What that was about either, but
and no, Greg's not having that. He attacks and chokes Piper over the top rope in a pretty cool looking bit of violence at the end in a match filled with cool violence. I really like this. I know I'm not the only one, and there's nothing I can really say that hasn't been said probably about this, but it is a hell of a fun match. And I was reading a little bit about, because I wondered what they said about it, how they felt about it, because there were some lasting injuries from Piper from continuing to do this because his ear got so fucked up. He lost a lot of hearing, and then it was so popular that they had to keep doing this match across the territories.
Right?
Yeah.
And I just think that's amazing. And this match to me is pretty revolutionary.
No doubt. Stiff is not the word for it
Nope.
when it comes to this match, because this is a no shit steel chain, right? There's no gimmicking that. So I know you can there are guys who are really good at throwing working punches, right? But how are you going to throw a working chain shot? Like if you're hitting somebody to any degree with a steel chain wrapped around your fist, I mean,
Hmm.
sure, you can pull your punch, but if that thing's making contact at all, that hurts like a motherfucker, you know?
And then you got
Perhaps you're,
dropping his elbow like right on top of Piper's skull when he's
yeah, to say
going.
nothing for that,
Yes.
right? It's like, any, think of like any kind of bone on bone kind of, like the type of stuff that Regal does, you know? Like that just, it
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
like it's so grinding. It's like, no, it's not going to concuss you necessarily, but you're going to be covered in welts and bruises the next day. And I just feel like that's what this type of match is, just nonstop getting hit with something that is so completely unforgiving that there's no way to really do it safely.
Hmm.
You just got to eat those shots. And to your point, Jenny, the fact that this was not just one and done, they have to run the match all over the territory, because it did prove so popular in front of multiple different audiences and venues. These are some tough sons of bitches. That's all I
That's
can
wild.
say.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I figure as they keep doing it, they get better at, kind of
They
minimizing
probably
some of
figure
the
out,
impact,
yeah. Hmm.
but
Yeah.
not here. Not the
No,
first time.
I mean, this is one of the
Because
most
it's got to look good for TV. You know,
right.
this has to,
Hell yeah.
with a crowd where it's not being filmed. It's never going to be shown to a wider audience. It doesn't have to look good for the camera. There's no camera present. It's just gotta fool the marks who are there,
It's got to
right?
look good for the people in the front row, right?
Hmm. That's
But
about it.
but this is a straight up fight. Like this is like
Hmm.
and it's and I love the tip. We'll get back to this in a little bit, this topic, but I am never ever 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 a fan of champions in non-title matches on pay-per-view events or
Hmm.
marquee events, if you will. However, in this case, it makes sense because they said the Crockett promotions were not willing to sanction this match because they knew how
Yeah.
violent it was going to be. They weren't going to sanction it, and for that reason, Valentine's United States Championship is not on the line. So it's just a fight for honor between the aggrieved Roddy Piper and the man who's been tormenting him, Greg the Hammer Valentine, my namesake, who I've always had
Yeah.
a soft.
Of course.
They say it takes him, what is it, 15 minutes just to get warmed up, Tim?
45 minutes.
45 minutes just to get. See, that's the problem. That's why he lost.
45.
He would have won this match if he had the mandated 45 minutes that it takes for him to get warmed up in every match. But
Right. He didn't even get warmed up. He
no,
got
not
bloodied without getting warmed up.
look at that effort he put in without even being warmed up.
I
Incredible.
know.
They're jerking each other violently. They're going bone on bone. They're doing
Telling
all
you.
kinds
Very sexual match.
in
Mm.
the ring. But
If
no,
you have any kind of choking kink, this is the match for you.
absolutely.
You know what? I was gonna say if I had two criticisms of this otherwise fine match. I do like the finish for what it is. I think it really works. I agree with you, Jenny. Part of me though wanted to just see Piper choke him out with the chain.
Yes.
Just choke him the fuck out.
Same.
You know, that'd just be that would titillate me in other ways. My second criticism is a very juvenile one, and it's that they have the exact same tights on, not
Oh,
just
yes, I hate
the
that.
same
I
color.
do hate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the same shade of tights and everything. Like it's not even it's hard to even um, distinguish them. I
It
mean, they
seems like that was a common thing back then, and I don't really.
yeah, and
It
I always
was, yes, it's very annoying.
it's such an avoidable thing, right?
Yep.
All you got to do is, hey, what are you wearing tonight? Blue. All right, well, I guess I'll wear red.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. One of them wearing white would have been nice because of all the blood.
Oh, that would have
sure.
been
But
great.
Yeah.
but no, I mean this. What more can be said? This is one of the most famous matches in whatever you want to call it. WCW Mid Atlantic Crockett Starcade history. It's the dog collar match people talk about to this day. Up until recently, it was inarguably the best dog collar match. And there's the violence. It made I wouldn't say that necessarily made their careers because they were already big stars, but it's undoubtedly one of the things that people think about if they're wrestling fans and they think of Roddy Piper and they think certainly of Greg the Hammer Valentine, probably his most famous moment in wrestling, is
Gotta
this
be, right?
this legendary match because of the exposure it had nationwide. People got to see it, and it holds up. It's a brutal, bloody fight. It set a template that people tried to copy for years to come in terms of how you do these types of matches. I don't think until the last maybe year and a half when AEW and Ring of Honor had some really good dog collar matches, I don't think that I ever really saw mainstream companies do dog collar matches that were close to this good, like or chain matches that were close to this good. I remember Olaf having a pretty mediocre one at some pay-per-view when I was a kid, and they none of them could match this violence, and obviously it took a toll on the performers. Both guys had injuries coming out of these chain matches, but I loved it. Great fight. I will say, I'll be that guy. My one little nitpick, I don't love the finish because I feel like a match that violent, that brutal, that visceral needs something more after all of that than him falling off the middle rope and Roddy loosely hooking his leg with the chain. I would have liked to see a choke out, or even if Roddy had gotten on top of him in like the mount position and gone bone on
bone. Right, bone on bone.
Bone on bone.
And just beat him in the head with the chain until he was knocked out or something. That would have given me personally a catharsis, but I'm also like the one person in the universe that doesn't like the War Games 92 finish for a similar reason. So I get
you're not the only one.
I'm kind of an outlier on finishes sometimes, but that being said, the match is unbelievable. Like it's amazing how well it holds up. What are we, 40 years later at this point? So it's I guess this is the 40th anniversary of that match, right?
Coming up.
Yeah. So
it is. Yeah.
I would say of the three matches that we watch here today, I loved the first one. We'll talk about the third one, but this is the match to watch if you have to watch just one match coming out of the show. And if you haven't somehow seen this match, pull it up on Peacock or wherever you can get it and watch it, because it's a brilliant piece of business and one that both guys made a reputation off of.
I will say this.
Also, just watch all of Starrcade 83.
Yes, please watch all of Starrcade 83. I have such not just a soft spot for it. I just think it's a really interesting show with a lot of variety on it.
Absolutely. I would give good money to people to give me more good footage of the tag team of Slater and Orton, who I absolutely fell in love with. I watched this show. Can't find a lot of footage of them together. So
I thought you were gonna say Sully and what's his face?
Oh no,
Caudle. Yeah.
Sully and Caudle. That's a separate team.
Well, sure. Yeah.
I would love to see more footage of them together too. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Sully and Caudle hauling matches with Slater and Orton. That would be.
In watching this back, which I have actually been watching the match in the background as we talk about it. That finish, though we don't love it, Greg, I think it's necessary because it allows them to do the heat segment immediately afterwards.
Post-match.
Yeah, because it's like the idea is this is not the end of the road here. This thing is gonna continue, and so you do have Valentine kind of getting over on Piper even in defeat there, which you can't really do that if Piper straight up chokes him out and he's left laying in a heap of his own blood and sweat and urine and feces and vomit. like we wanted.
That's fair point.
So had this been truly the conclusion, the blow off, if you will, that's the way to go.
And I guess the frustrating
and perhaps they did that. Perhaps they did that at some point.
I think the frustrating part is the true blow-offs would have been at the house shows in those days.
Right. We wouldn't have seen them.
Because what is it? It's less than 6 months later, and both guys are up north in the WWF, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Early to mid '84 is when they both went up to to New York.
Yep. Well, that's the cool thing about Roddy Piper, right? Has the distinction of appearing on the first Starrcade and the first WrestleMania.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah,
Good
hell
on him.
hell of a piece of business. And then for my piece of business that I selected for this episode, we're gonna have to fast forward quite a lot. We're gonna go past the first. We're gonna go past Roddy Piper's retirement match, even in 1997, believe it or not, against Adrian Adonis. We're gonna go past They Live and the meteoric Hollywood rise of Roddy Piper. We're gonna go past Morton Downey Jr. We're gonna go past the bologna sandwiches at WrestleMania 8. We're even going to go past his legendary encounter with Jerry Lawler at King of the Ring 1994. We're going to go all the way to 1996. Just think back to that year. The Gin Blossoms were popular.
Mm-hmm.
Friends was the number one show on television. You had other things happening in 1996.
I think he covered it.
The Macarena.
Gin Blossoms and
That's
Friends.
about it.
God damn it. The Macarena became popular that year. Anyway, all kinds of shit. But the NWO was birthed in 1996. The New World Organization, brother, was
Of wrestling.
born that year and was taking the world by storm. It had transformed WCW overnight. And Hollywood Hulk Hogan and his band of cronies, the Outsiders, Ted DiBiase, the Giant, they were just running roughshod over WCW. They were they had
Six. You can't forget Six.
Six. That's right, Six Pack. They had run roughshod. They defeated the Giant and then turned him to their side. They had dispatched of Ric Flair. They had dispatched of the Macho Man Randy Savage and turned him even, or were about to turn him rather. They turned Elizabeth to their side after Hulk Hogan forced her to tell him that she loved him, even though she don't.
Yeah.
And so at this point, if you're a fan of tradition, if you're a fan of World Championship Wrestling, you're thinking to yourself, who is there? Who's going to save us? Sting's off in the rafters being emo. Lex Luger is still undetermined at this point. We don't know what's happening. DDP is still a bad guy. He's not yet.
Yeah, he's probably next to Jordan for all we know.
Yeah. So what's it going to be, brother? What's it going to be? And sure enough, here, out of nowhere comes the Hot Rod, Roddy Piper. He makes an appearance, I believe, at the end of Halloween Havoc 96.
Yeah, after Hollywood Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage worked their comedy match on the heels of one of the most intense angles in all of wrestling, a really logical, well thought, intricately written sequel to the implosion of the Mega Powers. This is the next logical extension of that. And we're going to cap it off with, boy, you talk about some Three Stooges offense. This was some Three Ninjas offense here at Halloween Havoc in that main event.
There were toupees involved. Yes.
Very toupee based offense there in that match.
So the Hot Rod comes back, and then it's just the question of what does this mean? What does this mean for WCW? Is Roddy Piper signed? Is he going to come in and take on Hulk Hogan and try to take down the NWO? Well, we start hearing on commentary for weeks on Monday Nitro from the commentator Eric Bischoff, who we know is also the president of World Championship Wrestling, saying that he's been in contact with Roddy Piper, and he's assuring people that Roddy Piper will be coming to WCW, and he's eager to take on Hulk Hogan. Well, this goes on week after week after week, and Eric Bischoff starts to tell us, well, negotiations aren't going great. Things keep breaking down a little bit. We're going to get it signed. We're going to get the match signed. But he keeps putting it off and putting it off. And he says finally that, he met with Roddy Piper and by God, Roddy Piper just doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to. It's not going. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. At least not yet. And this all leads to, Tim, I believe I've told you this before in the past.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite Nitro segment of all time.
Yeah. Which
is Hollywood Hogan and Eric Bischoff, I believe, is already in the ring, if I'm not mistaken. And Bischoff's explaining to Hogan. Hollywood Hogan is saying that Piper's not he's gonna run scared, brother. He wants nothing to do with me, dude. And then Bischoff's like, it's gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen yet. And then the bagpipes hit. and the arena explodes, and out comes Roddy Piper, looking like a badass, leather jacket. Here he comes, and he means business. He comes into the ring, and in just what I think is just a masterful pro wrestling segment, lays it all out. We don't know what he's going to say. I'm a 12-year-old kid. I'm at the edge of my seat watching this at the time, and it's like he stands there, and I don't remember the promo verbatim, but he says, basically he exposes that Eric Bischoff has been lying to everybody for months. And he says, I've never...
When you flew here to the arena, Bischoff, did you fly coach or did you fly first class? Which was it? You know, he's interrogating him.
Yeah, and he says, I never met you in my life. You say you came to my house. Wait, is the road crooked or straight? And Bischoff's starting to stammer, and he's like, well,
I don't remember.
Is it crooked or is it straight? So then the next thing you know, like by the end of this segment, Piper has exposed that the guy that has been responsible for this whole thing, the NWO, has been Eric Bischoff. He's been sponsoring corporate takeover from the inside. And Bischoff and Hogan and the NWO lay a beat down on Piper and go after his artificial hip that he's had from a motorcycle accident years earlier. And they lay him out, and and Bischoff has officially turns heel for the first time ever, setting off the rest of his career, of course, and he becomes the toady of Hollywood Hogan. And I love this segment. I would encourage anyone, if you haven't ever seen this segment on Nitro, I don't remember the exact episode, go watch it. It's amazing. To me, it put context to the NWO storyline that made everything little nuances work, and added context to things that had happened months earlier. And it's just great shit. And so that all leads us to Starrcade 1996, which is my match that I've picked this week. The main event, Hollywood Hulk Hogan versus Roddy Piper in a battle of the icons to determine who the greatest icon of wrestling is. And now, I mentioned earlier in the show when we were talking about the Valentine match, that match was non-title, but it didn't bother me because there was a reason for it to be non-title. This one bothers me because this match is non-title, even though Hollywood Hulk Hogan is the NWO/WCW heavyweight champion of the world.
It's non-title, but don't worry about it. Just we don't talk about that. Right?
Yeah, we don't talk. We're gonna do an interview at the beginning of the show. By the way, Roddy Piper cuts an absolutely unhinged interview at the beginning of the show with Mean Gene backstage.
Oh yeah, it was amazing.
I can't begin to transcribe it for you, but you gotta see it to believe. He's all over the place. It's great. And in that, Mean Gene of all people makes it sound as if this is gonna be for the title because he calls Roddy Piper the challenger.
Mm-hmm.
So they start and I think the audience thought it was for the title. That's the impression I got. And so
they were definitely trying to make people think it was.
So,
and that's partly storyline as well. It was sort of like, well, because the announcers after the fact are sort of like, well, we thought it was for the title, right?
Yeah, it was such a hot time for the business. Like the NWO storyline was really by this point really starting to catch fire, and people were getting into it. You can see it with all the shirts in the crowd, and which sets up a great line of dialogue at the beginning of this match where Tony Schiavone says, "Look you got people with NWO shirts and they're chanting Roddy," and then like maybe I'm talking 5 to 10 seconds later, Dusty goes, "And that ain't all, Tony. You got a lot of them people in them NWO shirts and they're rooting for Piper too." And he goes, "Oh, did you just say that?" And Tony goes, "Yeah, I did." It's outstanding. So that sets us up. Hollywood makes his entrance first. The champion comes out first, which is unusual. And he comes out with Ted DiBiase, who had just gotten into the hair dye that morning, I think. He's walking alongside him, Miss Elizabeth.
The shoe polish.
Miss Elizabeth, and I think Eric Bischoff maybe, although he doesn't stay at ringside. And they're walking down, moseying their way down the aisle. And Hogan gets in the ring, rips the shirt off. He's looking good. He's looking trim. He's in good shape. Looks confident. And then the bagpipes, and out comes Piper for his first match in some time. And I guess his first match since WrestleMania 12 earlier that year, so not that long. But he comes out.
Yeah.
He comes out and he's getting a huge reaction. He gets in the ring. The whole crowd's chanting Roddy, Roddy. They're excited for this match. This feels legitimately like a big fight. The announcers are outstanding. It's one of my favorite commentary trios. Actually, my favorite commentary and cartoon commentary of all time, of Tony, Bobby, and Dusty. And Bobby Heenan carrying his hatred of Hulk Hogan to such a degree that he becomes a babyface is phenomenal. It's jarring at first to hear Bobby as a face, but it works because all three announcers openly rooting for Hogan to get his ass whipped. It is just tremendous and adds so much to this match, so much drama. It starts out and Hogan gets the early advantage because he's stronger. He kind of bullies Piper into the corner and slaps him. He's trying to. The announcers are telling the story that Hogan is trying to get Piper out of his game, trying to sucker Piper into going outside of the ring, because if he's outside the ring, that's where Hogan has the advantage because DiBiase's there. And there's other members of the NWO that are always lurking around. So if Hogan can get him outside the ring, he'll have the advantage. But if they stay in the ring, he's worried because he's never been able to beat Roddy Piper, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
Piper's the one guy he was never able to pin. So that's something that they play off of, the fact that Piper spent all those years as Hogan's antagonist, and Hogan could not, for whatever reason, couldn't solve that riddle. And so now Piper is in the position of being the babyface who's conquering Hogan, and he's, Roddy starts getting the advantage, and every time he takes the advantage, he'll hit him with a clothesline or come back with a punch, and Hogan will powder to the outside, and he'll try to sucker Roddy out there. And for the longest time, it doesn't work until it does. Eventually, it gets to the point where Piper gets so frustrated that he chases Hogan to the outside, and he beats him all around ringside area. And it looks like Teddy DiBiase is going to do something, but he doesn't. He just backs off. And honestly, that was mostly the story of DiBiase.
I was going to say, very consistent with the managerial career of Ted DiBiase.
Yeah, he acts like he might do something, but then thinks better of actually doing anything and does nothing instead. So,
relatable.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's a manager after my own heart. So they get into the ring and there's everything that you would expect from both guys in their respective roles. Piper at one point escapes I don't remember if it was a sleeper or what, but he escapes with the 2 fingers to the eye, Three Stooges eye poke.
Yeah, man.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets one of the biggest pops of the match. People love it. Piper's moving around pretty good, honestly, for his age and for his injuries and stuff. He's running the ropes, clotheslines, does a suplex at one point. He's, they're by their standards, they're not working at a blistering pace, but they're cutting a decent pace. And it's telling a good story. Hogan is, he's bigger and stronger, but he just cannot figure out Roddy Piper. He can't figure out how to put him away. Finally, Piper is on the mat. Hogan says he's going to end it now, and he goes for the big leg, and he misses it. And Piper gets up, and it looks like Piper is ready to take the advantage. And about this time, the Giant, who is, again, a member of the NWO, he comes moseying out to ringside. And the match kind of breaks down a little bit because they don't do a great job of distracting the official, in my opinion. But
well,
Hogan just kind of like grabs the referee, and the Giant, who's 7 feet tall and 400 pounds or whatever, the referee.
He's elusive. He's an elusive giant.
Yeah, the referee has to actually physically attempt to not see him, and so the Giant gets in and grabs Roddy Piper into the air in a choke slam position, and this is where it almost feels like time stands still, because Giant holds Piper in the air in this choke slam position for what had to be 35 seconds. He's up in the air just holding him, while Hogan is jostling with the referee, trying to make sure the referee doesn't see this literal giant behind him holding a man in the air. Meanwhile, some drunken redneck jumps the guardrail, zooms past Ted DiBiase, and slides in the ring and tries to tackle Hogan, who knees him in the face. And then Randy Anderson and Hulk Hogan start stomping the shit out of this guy in the corner. And then the officials pull the dude out, and one of the cops puts the guy in the Taz mission. Meanwhile, the Giant looks like his arm is finally about to fade as he's holding a grown man in the air.
They're holding much longer.
And the Giant, you can see his arms start to wiggle a little bit. And then Hogan goes over to do the spot they were supposed to do a minute ago. And Piper kicks Hogan, knocks him over, bites the Giant in the forehead, and then clotheslines the Giant over the top rope. Hogan staggers back. Piper slaps on the sleeper hold, goes down. And I think at this point, all the fans are looking to the back, expecting more run-ins from the NWO. Nobody comes running out. And so they do the 3-arm drop, the 1, the 2. And I thought this was actually a brilliant moment because it was a sign of how far Hulk Hogan had fallen. Because remember, this was a classic Hulk Hogan spot. The 3rd arm, they're going to drop it the 3rd time. He's going to Hulk up and he's going to win the match. Well, now that he's Hollywood, he no longer has that power. The fans aren't on his side. The fans aren't giving him the energy. He drops for the 3rd time, and Roddy Piper has just beaten Hulk Hogan cleanly in the middle of the ring with the sleeper hold, knocked him unconscious. The fans go nuts. Roddy has won. He's not the world champion, but he just made the world champion pass out to his sleeper hold. And there's some post-match shenanigans involving the Giant, but I'd have to explain that the Giant won World War III, and the whole there's a lot of stuff going on. But
he dropped the ball. That's what happened.
Yeah,
Drop the ball, brother. He got a workout though. He got a workout having to hold Roddy Piper in the air for 20 minutes.
I'm telling you, I have no idea how strong Paul White must have been to do that. That was, not that Piper is this huge dude, but
Sure.
we know that wrestlers, just even guys like Piper that we might have thought were smaller when we were kids, those guys are huge. They're all big.
They're still, enormous human beings.
And for him to hold him up there that long was incredible. But even with all of that stuff, with the drunken redneck fan trying to come in the ring and getting the hell beat out of him, which to me kind of added to the situation, honestly.
That is so WCW, right?
Yes.
It just,
Yes.
It was, and like I said, I think the last episode I may have said something like this is the last great Roddy Piper match. Maybe having watched it again, maybe it's not great, but I do think it's the last really good Roddy Piper match. We talked about that. I thought they told a really good story. I think that as Hollywood Hogan matches go, this is one of the better ones. And I love the drama. The only thing I would have changed really is I would have had it be for the title. I think they could have switched the title here and had Hogan win it back at the Alcatraz match they did the next month.
Yes.
The Alcatraz special. They could have easily done that, and I think it would have been fine to switch the title here because you just saw the world champion get beat at Starrcade, and I know that Eric has said on his podcast that he never viewed Starrcade the same way that a lot of the fans did, but to me that's just such as great a finish as that is, it's a better finish if Roddy wins his one and only world title there.
Even if it's just for, like you said, that cup of coffee, 2 months and he drops it back. Fine, whatever. Look, they had Luger win it for a week. Right? Exactly. At a time when they're building up Sting as the champion in waiting. So why not just give it to Piper here? But I'm kind of with you. This is, I wouldn't call it a Matt classic by any means, but it's on par with what you would expect to see from a Hulk Hogan Roddy Piper singles match, with the interesting facet of it, the role reversal, right? I know that the criticism everyone has is, WCW had no identity of their own. All they ever did was raid, WWF's talent roster and recreated what the WWF was in their glory days, into the early 90s. And while you can say, yes, the same guys are there, it's the same faces you've seen before, WCW did a good job of acknowledging that history and building on it and not just giving you the same thing, even though it's the same matches, right? We're getting different dimensions to these characters now, just like Hogan and Savage. That was a total role reversal with, heel NWO Hollywood Hogan. I know the match left something to be desired, but the story was really tremendous. And same thing here, where we're actually capitalizing on the fact that Piper has been so protected throughout his career, hasn't taken that clean pinfall loss to Hulk Hogan. It's like, Piper, if anybody has got Hulk Hogan's number here, it's Roddy Piper. And we like that, right? The fans are really into that now rather than seeing it as a liability.
Mhm.
So I love that the new spin that we can put on these characters through particularly the NWO storyline. So that's why I don't think that particular criticism necessarily holds water.
Yeah, we've got
And I love the match for what it is. And I always have. There was a time where I don't think it was safe necessarily to say that you were a fan of this match,
Yep,
right? Or any of their matches, because they go on to they end up having a trilogy of matches here in WCW. This, I mean, I think we can probably agree is the best of them. The Alcatraz match is, well, quite something. And then that thing at Halloween Havoc the next year is its own sort of set of challenges. But here it kind of feels like a classic showdown between Piper and Hogan, the way you'd want to see it, just with different dynamics.
Here's the other thing that WCW gave the people that the WWF never did: a definitive finish to a Hogan and Piper match.
Very true. Yes.
Like this never saw in WWF. We never saw Piper. I never saw Piper pin Hogan, and we certainly never saw Hogan pin Piper. Here we get first encounter in WCW. So,
I mean, it was only missing a roll of quarters for me,
There you go. Yes.
I really liked their promos. Well, not Hogan's as much because it was very Hogan, but I liked Piper's promo with Gene in the locker room. That's definitely worth a watch if you go back to watch this match. And it does have that huge match feel to it. And even though we're not doing any big spots, it's pretty safe as far as the match goes. There are little things, little details in here that I really love, like when Piper picks up the ref and puts him on the turnbuckle and pats his head. Little things like that, and even just his reaction to winning, he just kind of walks off, like
he is not
it's another day.
Yeah, he is not surprised one bit that he's beaten Hulk Hogan.
No, and I kept waiting for something to happen. Is he gonna come back out? Like, nope. Piper just said, I put you in this sleeper hold and you went to sleep, and then I walked off and with my sons. And it was just so nonchalant and so frankly non-Piper. When you said they have a trio of matches, I was like, well, shit, because this feels like Piper never even thought about Hogan again.
Mm-hmm. Like where do you go from here? Yeah.
Well, and what they ended up doing was they put the title on the line in the Alcatraz match.
Right.
And
they keep calling it the Alcatraz match. They don't have a match in the Alcatraz prison / historical site, to be clear.
No,
I think that's what it sounds like we're saying.
Well, lame.
But Piper cuts a promo from Alcatraz, allegedly.
Yes, what is it? He has spent like a week or something, or a few days, in the to get his mind in the right headspace for this match. It's a whole, it's a mood.
It is, and then they just kind of shift immediately to the Giant and Hogan. The Giant very upset with everybody because he didn't get any help from anybody. So it felt like a fever dream by the end of it, because now I'm thinking about the Giant and Hogan.
There's a bunch of different and I think that's actually the idea, because the main event of the next pay-per-view was going to be the Giant versus Hogan for the world title, because on World War III. Earlier in this show, the Giant lost to Lex Luger, and none of the NWO guys came out to help him. And so in this match, he came out to help Hogan. It didn't work, and then Hogan and the Outsiders are berating him, and he's saying, "Where the hell were you guys when I need you? You haven't been helping me. All I've been doing is helping you." And
they're like, "What do you want? The Giant was out there. We thought he could do the job, right?"
Yeah.
So
and again, the announcing in this match is just amazing.
Bobby is just chef's kiss.
At one point, when Piper pulls that belt off and starts whipping Hogan with it, and Tony's like, "He got that belt from a security guard," or Or I guess maybe it was a fan. And Bobby goes, who cares? He's got a belt and he's whipping Hogan with it. Take my belt. I don't care.
And then he says something about he's pulling Hogan's hair.
Yeah.
It's like that won't take long.
Yeah, Tony says, pulling out all of Hogan's hair. And Bobby goes, well, the good news is that won't take long.
Just so petty.
Yep.
Just,
Yep.
I love it.
Great.
This is the beginning of my sweet spot of like where I think WCW was at its absolute best, was like starting at the NWO angle in the summer, but honestly, like this is where it really like they start the ball rolling on the Sting stuff. Piper comes in, you're about to get the turn of DDP and his whole thing with Randy Savage.
Mm-hmm.
You're about to get heel Eddie Guerrero. It starts an incredible run of WCW television and pay-per-views, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're covering all that on the Wrestling Warzone on NoSo. So
Yeah,
you can
really good.
relive all of that.
Doing really good work there on our sister network, the North South Connection. So soft plug, if you will, right?
There you go.
If you're a soft plug, not like being jerked violently or going on.
Right, not like the
Nice.
plugs that make up Hollywood Hogan's hair. No, he definitely does not have this. It's remarkable what the promotion was able to accomplish here, kind of in that second half of the year, 1996, even without Sting wrestling or even really actively appearing most of the time. And we forget DDP is still kind of a mid-card heel, right? He's not even a major face getting the push that he would the next year. And I mean, bringing in Piper, just a stroke of genius on the part of this promotion, gives you this great, huge main event to close out what's been a tremendous year for the company. And I mean, I think kind of breathes new life into Roddy Piper, whose career, I mean, some would say at this point he was a little bit washed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Goldust match was the worst thing in the
No.
world at WrestleMania, but
Yeah.
is that really how we wanted to remember Roddy Piper? Like,
Right.
if that had been his last match ever, it's sort of like, is this fitting? You know, is this
Right.
like the best we could have done with this guy? And no, in fact, he is back in a big way here for this, you know, what is pretty much their biggest event of the year, despite what Eric Bischoff might say and feel about it. They had the ability to do so, so they brought him in, and we get this, which I enjoyed a great deal. I did look at, by the way, I was curious. I wanted to see, like, everybody talked about how, you know, the main eventers in WCW are so old, they need to get out of the way, let these, you know, young guys step up and take the spotlight. They need to get out of there. They're just taking up space, you know, breathing all the air in the room, that kind of thing. So Roddy Piper would have been 43 at the time of this match. Hollywood Hogan would have been 44.
No.
By
Oh, really?
comparison, yeah. AJ Styles is about to be 46. Huh?
Yeah, people aged a lot worse.
Yeah. AJ Styles is about to be 46, like,
Wow.
in a month.
Wow.
Just to put it in perspective.
That's crazy.
Isn't it? I mean,
That is wild.
you know, Bryan Danielson is in his 40s. Samoa Joe is in his 40s. And people are like, yeah, let them wrestle forever, right? So it's not, I guess it's so much not your age as it is what you bring to the table.
Exactly.
And back then, also, 40 was not, I suppose, what it is today. I mean,
is Roddy the only wrestler that appeared at WrestleMania and Starrcade in the same year?
Twice, in fact, right? So he did the first Starrcade and first WrestleMania. Well, that wasn't the same year.
That was a year. Yeah,
Years apart. So, yeah, this would be the same year. It's WrestleMania 12.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at that. I don't know. Could be.
I'm not sure either, but it
seems
It could be true. He has the fight with Goldust at WrestleMania 12, and then it started. And what I was going to say is, like, if you've watched the WWF pay-per-views around this time, not that they're not good pay-per-views at times, there's some of them are, but like, for instance, SummerSlam 96.
They're real flat in comparison.
Yes, Starrcade. That shows you how great of a job WCW had done, because this Starrcade show feels like a bigger show than the WWF.
Oh, by far. Yeah.
It just the star power, the matches up and down the card, the crowd engagement. It just feels like this is a bigger deal than the stuff that's happening in the competition, which nobody else has been able to do with the WWF. And WCW had it. And this was around.
They had it.
Yep. And they held it for quite some time. 83
they
weeks.
Had it, and they held it. 83 weeks. Yep.
Bone to bone, they had it and they held it.
Bone to bone, they had it going on, and I think we have had it going on too.
Viciously jerk anyone if it meant bringing WCW back.
Me too, man.
Same. Hard same.
Well said.
But so what is whose turn is it to pick on our rotating wheel of picks?
Well, I picked this. Didn't I? Yes.
Yes, you did.
I believe you did pick.
Who was our last subject? Was that Mr. Steamboat?
It was uncensored.
Oh, that was me. So that means
okay.
It's up to Mr.
That means I am next.
Yep.
That means I'm on the spot now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So why don't we do
Bob Caudle.
Prince Iakea. Bob Caudle and Prince Iakea.
I kind of want to. Could we get away with Tully Blanchard?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
How do y'all feel about that? Y'all like it?
Yes.
I like it.
I love it.
All right, book it. Our next episode, we're doing Tully
One
Blanchard.
of my favorite wrestlers of all time.
Okay,
That
I didn't know
is gonna
that.
be fun.
All right. I didn't know that about you, Greg Phillips. See, I'm already learning things. All right, I'm glad. I'm confident in this pick now. Tully Blanchard is going to be our next episode.
I was hoping you would lean more tag team, but this actually is good.
I thought about it.
You can
You can easily get him.
We can certainly pick some tag team.
You can pick tag teams with him. Yep, he's got a lot of great tag matches. So
that's what I automatically think of him as, is a tag wrestler as opposed to singles.
Makes sense. All right, well, we've got some very fun research ahead of us.
We do.
But I really enjoyed this episode, you guys.
Yes, the Hot Rod.
There's a lot of ways we could have gone with this. We could have gone more modern. By modern, I mean 90s. Roddy. We were more heavily weighted towards the 80s. But it's one of those we could always revisit, just like a lot of guys.
Totally.
Surprised we haven't done it yet.
And I feel like this was a good episode because the 80s. Let's face it, 80s Roddy is when he was at his absolute best. However, I feel like 90s WCW Piper gets maligned by a lot of people, and I think he was a lot better than people give him credit for. Maybe not in the ring at all times, and maybe he went off the rails at times as well with his promos. For the most part, he was cool. He still cut entertaining promos. He still had the Roddy Piper aura about him in a way that he kind of didn't have when he did his later comeback in the WWE.
Agreed.
This was still Roddy Piper as Roddy Piper, and I think he did a lot of great stuff in WCW.
Well said. Do you have anything else that you want to plug, Greg?
Well, fans, if you want to see more of Bob Caudle's car dealership, you can visit me on Twitter at gphillips8652. And that's
What about you, Tim?
Well,
do it as Gordon Sully, though.
Well, fans, the other professional wrestling podcast you can find me on is with my dear friend Jennifer Smith and Jacob Williams. It is PTB NXT here on Place to Be Nation Wrestling. That's a monthly podcast, just like
it'll appeal directly to your prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, available on closed circuit only. So, Jenny, we'll probably have an episode of that coming up
Yeah. Should
around
be
the
soon.
time that people are hearing this, if not out already. Will be. It tends to run pretty adjacent to this show.
Yeah. We've been pretty current. I've been pretty proud of us sticking
I
on
think
schedule.
so. We've been hanging in there. Beyond that, on the Place B Nation Pop experience, so not Place B Nation Wrestling, but Place B Nation Pop with the fine folks over there, those being Scott Shiflett, Sean Kidd, and Andy Atherton. I do a comics podcast that is called Traders of the Lost Arcs. Lost being kind of a subjective term, but basically it's a show where we read and review old comics. I tend to My tastes tend towards more of the obscure. Others, their mileage may vary, but we all kind of have different takes on comics of the past. Like me and Sean are both very old and have read comics forever. Scott Shiflett is very young, but is an avid comics reader. Andy Atherton has never really read comics at all, so an interesting mix
Mm-hmm.
of
A Danny
perspectives
Hodgepodge.
I find on that show. What about Danny Hodge? Is he an avid comics reader as well?
It's a Danny Hodgepodge of people, Connie.
A Danny Hodgepodge of people, yes. We're gonna look at some Danny Hodge comics next time around. No,
Well, I don't know who he fights in these comics, but I can promise you this: he whips their ass. If it's Hodge,
absolutely.
they have no chance.
Really OP. By the way, his stats. If you ever collected the trading cards from
Oh yeah,
the Fleer Ultra trading cards of the 90s, Danny Hodge was maxed out at 7 on like everything.
absolutely. Some of the stats even said NA, Conrad.
Yes, not applicable to him. So you can check that out. This plug is taking forever. And I have another podcast. It is called 9021 No So. It's its own dedicated show, not part of any network, although it is a spinoff of the North-South Connection. You can look for it on your preferred podcatcher app, 9021 No So. Myself and JT Rosero and a rotating guest for each and every episode. Recaps and reviews of Beverly Hills 90210. We're like halfway through season 2 now. We've been at it for a minute, and we're on a real hot streak of episodes, I gotta say. November sweeps, like 4 in a row, just been knocking it out of the park. So that podcast has been a real joy for us to do, hopefully for you guys to listen to as well. You can find me on Twitter. I am at Syke68, CYKE68. If you want to get in touch, DM me, whatever you want to do, and we'll connect.
We'll link up.
Is that all, Jimmy?
All right.
We'll link up.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we'll connect.
I was a guest on 90210 So recently. I got to do a really
You
big
sure
episode.
were. It was a very big episode.
So check that one out for sure. And on Wednesdays on the North-South Connection, that's my day, so you can catch one of my shows, be it you heard about Pluto or GC Dub, a game-changing podcast, or a new one called Talk'n Docs, where we review documentaries. So I'll link that on my Twitter at Jenny Position every week, and you can check those out. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you next time.